All right. Hello and welcome. We have a very special episode today of the Connect with Adult Dead, the Nemea podcast. My name is Nadia Cater as your host. My co-host and producer, Jamie Trujillo, is out on assignment, but I think I can handle this. I'm okay on my own. So I'm with the incredible and very active on social media, or at least my LinkedIn. I see you all the time on it. Sarah Cacicio from All In. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, this is, I say, a very special episode because you're technically, no, you are the first, like, kind of national presence that we've had on here. We do a lot of local to New Mexico, and I'm really looking to expand that. So this is the baby step here.
Although New Mexico is a model now for the rest of the country in terms of providing free access to GEDs and high school diplomas, right?
Yes. So we're recording this at the very tail end of March, right before COAB, which, by the way, Sarah, again, thank you for coming in right before we're supposed to be in Dallas for COAB 2025. Really quick, trying to get our stuff together. And yes, we just passed that in the last, I would say, week or so. It's really recent right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's so exciting.
It
Uh,
is.
yeah, there is a lot of people working on that. I wasn't, but definitely, and I can't think off the top of my head, but New Mexico is really we're really have a lot of dedicated, passionate people who are working on so many different things. So this is just so exciting that we have free tests, not vouchers, free high school equivalency tests. That's huge and can be a real barrier for students to pay that. So, yes, thank you. So, Sarah, how I usually structure these is I usually kind of position myself as I'm kind of a dummy here. I'm not the expert. I'm just the host, as in I bring in the people, and the people that come in are these experts, and they share what they're doing and what is going on in adult ed in their sphere. So I don't know a lot about what you do. I see it. I read the reports. I like them on LinkedIn. I share them with my field. But now we have you here to tell us what exactly is All In. What do you guys do?
The pressure. Well, I'm thrilled. I'm so excited, to be with you today. I love the podcast, and it's very important that adult education gets out of the echo chamber that we can be in sometimes and have different, formats for talking about adult education. So podcasts, social media, different conversations. I'm all about it. So, All In is the Adult Literacy and Learning Impact Network. I cannot take credit for the acronym All In. It was designed before I joined, which was about 2.5 years ago. But All In is a collective impact initiative convened by the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. And we are really dedicated to expanding access to high quality services for adults who are living, every day navigating life with low literacy skills. And so we really focus on understanding and trying to meet the needs of two interconnected groups, eligible adult learners as well as the providers who serve them. And our work is guided by what we call the National Action Plan for Adult Literacy, really a groundbreaking multi-sector strategy created by more than 100 leaders across the adult and family literacy ecosystem a couple of years ago. And so the idea was there is still such a great need in this country. Adult literacy is not improving in terms of literacy rates, access, investments. So, what can we do as a collective that no one organization can do alone? And that's really the impetus for All In. You can think of it like the implementing arm of the National Action Plan for Adult Literacy. So, we are trying to hold each other accountable to make sure that we carry out this plan and that we can improve adult literacy nationwide, whether it's capacity building, research, advocacy. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, this is so exciting. I love that just collective because I feel like we're so much stronger together, and you did use this term recently, but how I think of it is silo. So
Mhm.
it's similar terms. We could be so siloed in our own work and sometimes even individually of like
Mhm.
your work within an org. And it's so hard to really appreciate what is going on at the national level,
Mhm.
especially because of that. And it is so exciting. And that comparison between the program level versus like what's happening policy wide, what research is being conducted that has an effect on the program side. And that's when we're on the ground, we're not always a part of that. So
Mhm.
this is really exciting. So can you tell me about some of the projects that All In is involved in?
Yeah, sure. So, similar to what we started off talking about with the podcast, over the last 2 years, All In has really been trying to expand the conversation about adult education, about literacy beyond our field, right? And so when we got started, we said, how can we do this? What do people already know and think about adult literacy? Not only our educators, but also people that are not in this realm, right? In this field. And so what we did to start is essentially conduct market research to understand the demand for literacy skills and services from multiple perspectives. So we surveyed 500 employers and 200 policy influencers to understand what they think about adult literacy. We published in 2024. We found that employers really feel the urgency of this issue. I mean, we were blown away. 500 employers surveyed across multiple different industries, and so many said this is a big issue for us. With 1 in 3 saying their average employee does not have the literacy skills needed to do their job effectively. Never mind the talent pipeline of trying to find new talent. The people that are already in the jobs are struggling with literacy skills. On the other hand, policy influencers that we interviewed, they had a little bit of a rosier picture of the situation. They thought we were doing a lot better than we are doing in terms of national literacy levels. However, the latest data shows that the US ranks 36th in literacy rates, with about 28% of adults in the US only able to read short, simple sentences, maybe find one piece of information in a text. So, this is a real important issue. In addition to conducting research with employers and with policy influencers, we are now super excited to release a new report on the first ever national survey among 2,000 adults who are eligible but not enrolled in adult education services. So we teamed up again with FTI Consulting, who we've worked with over the last several years, and what we did was survey 2,000 adults who identified as having low literacy skills. And we had a screener tool to, make sure that we were able to accurately identify who participated, that they really were eligible for adult ed services. We had some incredible advisors from the field weigh in on those protocols and the screening process. But what we found is that 80% of respondents were unfamiliar with adult learning programs in their community. But once they realize there are free or low cost programs in adult foundational education, high school equivalency, English language, 84% expressed strong or moderate interest in enrolling. And this was especially true among parents, among young adults entering the workforce, and adults with learning differences. So we are just so thrilled to have the perspectives of adults who need these services. Now that we have this perspective, we can really inform the design and delivery of services to meet that need.
Oh my goodness. That is so incredible. And what a sample size of 2,000. That's wow. Like
And so
unpack.
and in many cases, they did the survey over the phone or
Mhm.
via text, so it was very accessible for the population that we're trying to reach. We also had it available in English or Spanish just to make sure that we're able to get even more representative sample of the population we serve.
Wow. So I'm trying to like unpack everything you just said. I was thinking about when you said that there is 28% of adults that aren't at the literacy level they need to be. I was also thinking about the changes that I've seen or read about with, for example, like in retail, where they super simplified even using the registers to have pictures because of that literacy struggle. And I was like, that's so interesting. And that disconnect between policymakers and employers.
Mhm.
And I guess to also probably extend that is to programs of like programs are working with students, but they don't know what or they may not know what employers need.
Mhm.
And then the policymakers also. So there's a lot of communication disconnect here
Mhm.
between the needs. So that is fascinating. Man, the research stuff is so important. This is I'm sorry, I love this stuff. Uh,
No, it's very cool to be able, because we've said this anecdotally, but it's very cool to have, some evidence to back up what you're saying. Employers want to support adults with learning differences, with, low literacy skills, but they don't know how, right? They want to collaborate with providers. They often don't know how to take the first step, right? Even something simple as onboarding, or some employers mention things like completing health insurance, right? Reaching out to HR if you have a question, right? Like these are the foundational communication, skills that you need to be participating in a workplace and be successful in a workplace. And it's some of those foundational skills that are the challenge. And so we feel that this is a solvable issue. We can effectively support employers and providers and make that connection to integrate strategies on the job. And that's one of the things we're excited about looking at in the future. There are simple strategies like explicit vocabulary instruction, really breaking down what a term means, that employers, learning and development, teams or provide training providers can use so that we're making sure that everyone understands what's available to them. So that to me is the exciting piece. This isn't that hard to do. Once you have everybody on board and understanding, oh, okay, we actually have the resources we need to support adults with low literacy skills. And adults, they are not blank slates. They come with so much skills, experiences, so much knowledge in certain areas, right? So oftentimes it's a matter of filling certain gaps that they might have in foundational numeracy or language or vocabulary, right? And helping people build that confidence in asking questions when they don't understand something, or asking for clarification, or taking a moment to check comprehension when they're in some kind of employer based training. So I know I'm focused on the employer based training in this conversation, but to me that is where a lot of people are as well. And so it's just such an important access point, and we're thinking about adult learning as happening in any place, right? And with technology, it's now possible to really expand where learning can happen and take place.
Absolutely. That's definitely something that, with my other job or well, this is kind of my job's kind of weird, but one of the biggest part of
Mine
my
too.
role
Yeah.
yeah, of being in professional development is figuring out like where these gaps are with practitioners
Mm,
specifically. And that is also a piece of like what is it that our learners need. You mentioned that All In worked with a consulting agency, FTI Consulting,
mhm.
and that is interesting too, because you're bringing in another party who has this experience, in consulting. But do they have experience with adult ed? Can you talk a little bit about that?
They do now. I mean, the team so we've been working with the strategic communications team. They are experts in how to create a feedback loop for the population that you want to connect with, whether it's through political campaigns or marketing. I mean, they do all sorts of things. And so the appeal for us was to work with an organization that has the expertise and how to connect with a specific population that we're trying to reach, find out what the barriers and challenges are for access. So that was really important for us in this work is we absolutely want to do more research on current adult learners. In this case, we wanted to understand why are there so many people that are not enrolling in services, right? So the current adult education system is serving less than 10%. Some people say less than 4%. We don't know exactly of the learners who need services. So that means, there's 90%, what Dr. Margaret Patterson has called in her work, the forgotten 90% of adults that are struggling with literacy skills, but they're not getting access to any types of services. So that's really the population that we wanted to hone in on. And 94% of the adults we surveyed said learning is important to them. Even those without a high school diploma, I think 68% of those we surveyed, sorry for all the stats, did not complete their high school diploma. And especially among those, they said learning's really important. I didn't know there were programs I could go to. I didn't know there were services available to people like me. That was actually one of the quotes we're going to be including in the report. And so to me, that's the fascinating piece. And the adult education system does so much with so little. I mean, we are providing students with creating a community. It's a shared space. It's a safe space. It's a trusted community. People are gaining skills. They're showing incredible skills gains, whether it's English skills, whether it's foundational skills, whether it's high school equivalency completion, but they need more investment, right? There's so many more services. There's so many more people that want to access services and could benefit from those services. And so we really wanted to understand the demand side for literacy skills to help build our case and say, hey, we know people want these services and need these skills. They're motivated. They want to build confidence. They want to support themselves and their families. A significant portion were parents themselves. However, now we need to build the infrastructure to meet that demand. We need more teachers that are paid competitive wages. We need more per pupil spending for adult education programs, more integrated education and training so we can really connect those pieces with workforce and skills. And I think that this research helps demonstrate and in a lot of ways demystify who these people are. They are hardworking adults. They have jobs. In many cases, they have families. They want to improve their skills. The circumstances that they're in has prevented them from completing their education or continuing their education. But the interest, the motivation, and the excitement for learning is there. And so for us, that's a really important case to make. These are not people who didn't complete education because they dropped out or were lazy, like some of those prevailing
Myths,
stigmas,
yeah.
myths,
Mhm.
and us in adult education, we know that's not the case. But, we need to get this message clear outside of each other.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about the strands that you're talking about. So there's definitely this need for more practitioners, especially
Hmm.
instructors. But I'm also thinking about, with my experience too, is with the literacy programs in New Mexico, we're working really hard to kind of get everyone at the same level because there's some programs that just started and there's programs that are more established. There are programs that have at least like 2 or 3 staff. There's some programs that have is like a one-man show, and
Yes.
how to get everyone on the same page with all this information. And I'm also thinking about what you're talking about is like outreach, because there's also with the programs, we'll need to know how to have a presence. We'll need to know how to like recruit and market in the community, how to where to reach the community. So there's a lot of different strands here that need to work together. I might have told this story on the podcast before, but last year I went to visit a friend who lives in Texas, and her mom recently moved in with her. And she was telling me how her mom was a refugee from Cambodia. And On and off, her mom loves education, is really dedicated to it, and her dream was to have this her high school equivalency.
Mhm.
She had a very, from what I could gather, because she was a refugee during the Khmer Rouge. So, there's not a lot of like standardized education at that time. And
Mhm.
then, escaping and coming here, bringing her family. And my friend is a K to 12 teacher. So she's an educator, has experience. And when she was telling me that her mom has been on and off in adult education programs for 10 years and never got her high school equivalency, I asked her some more questions because this is my field. And when she was saying her mom was struggling with, I forgot exactly what she said, but what it came down to was like, I was like, "It sounds like your mom needs a literacy program, not HSC. It sounds like
Mhm.
she's a little below that." And my friend was like, "What's the difference?" Like, she had no clue, and
Mhm.
she's already, so
Mhm.
she's someone in education, so I had
Right.
to explain it. And then I found, like, Texas's, like, network of literacy on their website, and I sent it to her, and I'm like, "Hey, find your mom a program. They could probably work one-on-one and give her individualized support." I haven't checked in to see how that's going, but, like, look at those, like, kinda disconnects, and also between family too, and
Mm.
how can families support each other and their family, friends, community if they don't even know that this stuff is available, let alone the learners that need it, right? It kinda all has to work together in some kind of, like, ecosystem.
Exactly, and there's so many competing priorities. I mean, my own mother has struggled with literacy her whole life and, has severe dyslexia, low confidence in reading, struggles with math, was a single mom. And I just watched her throughout my life struggle to read anything, to make decisions, to feel confident in decisions, right? Because she always felt she didn't fully understand all the options or all the details of each option, right? And I think that people think about this as like getting to a certain reading level, right? Like if we can just get people to reading level X, then we'll see all these benefits. But what we found through this research, your friend's story, my story, and all the students I've worked with is adult education is a lot more than helping people improve their reading skills. It's helping people understand what is possible and that they can be part of that. And understanding that literacy skills, reading skills, you already have some skills. It's just a matter of building on what you already know, figuring out the specific knowledge or skill set that you need to be successful in your life. And that does require mentorship. I mean, technology is incredible and can really help us reach people at scale, especially people who are at a certain skill level and need practice or expansion in certain areas. That's where technology can really shine. For people who are entering at emerging levels, they need mentorship, confidence, and encouragement in what they already know and then how they can develop and build on those skills. And I think you've hit a really important point about adult education is like how diverse of a field we're dealing with, right? Like it's not a classroom of second graders that everybody is at the same age, maybe at different levels, but same life experience up to this point. Relatively similar lived experience to this point. Never, I'm sure every kid
Yeah.
is coming from a different background, but you know what I mean? Whereas adults, they're just coming in with so much diversity in their experience. We serve adults who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, adults who have left their work because they're caring for family members or left school. Like there's just so many stories that go along with why people didn't complete their education. And there's often very little awareness, and our research shows that there are people who can help you. There are programs that understand your situation and can help you move forward from there. And so lack of awareness. And then the other piece is perceived costs. I was absolutely blown away at how many people we talked to that said, I can't enroll in any programs because I don't have enough money. Actually, 56% of those 2,000 were earning less than 30K. I mean, that is a real concern. And we said, "Oh, well, there's many free programs." And people were like, "What? I didn't know that."
Wow. I also wonder if that comes from culturally, like if people are coming from different countries who don't have like free adult education or
Mm.
free education in that sense, or public education rather, that maybe there is that also that disconnect. But I
It's
think what
also
you're
like, what's free these days?
what's yeah, everything everything costs
Barely. Yeah, I mean, libraries are free, and protect our libraries. I'll just put that in.
constantly.
But there are very few free services or spaces left.
Absolutely. And so grateful that right now adult education is for the most part free or at least very low cost. I think what you were getting at is like beyond just reading, we're looking at building people's knowledge and skill sets so they reach maybe perhaps a level of self-actualization of
Mhm.
knowing enough or having the skills to be able to better support themselves to and their families to reach goals because yeah, just directing towards a skill, it's not really the skill in itself, it's like what the skill can do for you, right? Or what
Mhm.
you could do with the skill. So, we talked a lot about the networking and the reports and the research. I was wondering if you could spend a minute talking about All-In's learning series, because that was something that really caught my eye too.
Sure. Yeah, this is something that we've just started this year. The idea for the All in Learning series is that there are so many excellent examples of adult education practices in the wild that are working. So, what we wanted to do is showcase what works, focus on unique aspects of adult education that can be shared with other practitioners. So, for example, we just had a session on adult public charter schools, which is a model I've been learning about since I moved to DC about 6 years ago. In Washington, DC there are 9 adult public charter schools, and the average per pupil spending for adult learner is over $11,000, whereas the average per learner spending on a national scale for federally funded programs is $837. So you can imagine the jaw drop when I'm like, wait, how much are they spending per learner? And what are the outcomes? Unbelievable outcomes, retention, completion rates, pass rates of high school equivalency, all of that is much higher than in other types of programs, and it is because they have more staff support more resources to support adult learners and meeting their needs. And so that is an example of one of the learning series sessions on adult public charter schools where we have people lay out what is a charter school, how does it work, how they developed their model over time and increased their annual revenue from 1.2 million, I think the Academy of Hope said, to 19 million annually, right? And here are the ways that we did that. And so we want it to be very actionable for the listeners. And we had people on the learning series session say, how can I start a charter in my community? And we just gave some tips like, here are a few places you should ask. Because things do vary state by state. And that's one of the interesting parts about operating in the United States is that there are similarities across all of our adult education programs, but then each state operates very distinctly. And that was another one of our learning series where we did research. We interviewed state directors, we interviewed some providers, and put together a paper on like what is the landscape of the educator experience in the adult ed space, like the wages earned, the credentials required, that kind of thing, because it really does vary state to state.
Oh, absolutely. That's incredible. 9 charter schools in DC? Really?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
And so each month we have a different topic. The month of April will focus on the value of research in adult education and get into the nitty gritty about how this research can translate into practice. To your point, that there's often a disconnect. It seems like research is this big, separate, vague thing, but actually, the findings can be very actionable for educators in many cases like turnkey strategies that they can use. So The communication, honestly, is the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity we have for All In.
That is really exciting. I'm going to put that on my calendar. I'm looking forward to that talk. And I also noted that you guys record your talks so that
Yes.
people can access them later. That's also really great. What is one success that you want to share? I know you shared it quite a few already, but if there's
Um,
anything that you missed.
sure. Well, I want to share a little bit more about who we are because I think we've talked about All In, but I would love for listeners to just have a sense of who is part of that. So, All In is convened by the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, that you can think of as the backbone organization. However, we have leadership from American Library Association, Coalition on Adult Basic Education, which you may know of, COABE, Dollar General Literacy Foundation, which has been a tremendous partner and sponsor of this work and helping us get stood up and started. We also work with Jobs for the Future, who really share a lot of that expertise on the workforce piece, on employer engagement, apprenticeships, that kind of thing. Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy in Houston, which is out of the Houston Public Library. They do some really phenomenal regional level work. National Association of State Directors of Adult Ed, which convenes all the state directors. So that's been a really wonderful partnership as well. National Center for Families Learning, focus on the four-part family literacy model, which is a whole nother area that we didn't get into today. But family literacy is just that two generational approach is such a phenomenal part of this work more broadly. We also work with National Coalition for Literacy, Pro Literacy Worldwide, TESOL International Association, and World Education, a division of JSI, especially the EdTech Center community that really supports capacity building and digital skills, digital literacy, AI literacy. So we have star-studded group of organizations each bring their own unique expertise and perspective and network, right? In many cases, we're like a network of networks. So our goal is really to bring all of the resources that we have, both human and sometimes financial as well. So one of the to give an example of how this works because it sounds so great like, oh, we're all working together and kumbaya, but it is a challenge to bring together this many organizations who could sometimes be competing for funding, right? And so we're trying to shift from this scarcity mindset to this collaborative, cohesive network. Last year we collectively applied for a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Science, IMLS, and we got a grant together with American Library Association as the prime to co-design adult and family literacy centers in libraries. And that project involves 3 library systems, Charleston Public Library, Chicago Public Library, as well as the Delaware Library Division. It's statewide in that case. And so we're really working directly with practitioners, with librarians, with patrons, and with multiple of the national organizations to understand like what could that adult and family literacy center look like? And then how could we scale it across 500 libraries? So I don't know when the last time you walked into a library, but a lot of times you walk in, you see New American Center, which gives information about civics education, English learning, passing the citizenship test. That's kind of what we're thinking here is that libraries are equipped to support literacy skills, whether it's directly or through, a warm referral or handoff in their community, but that they're better prepared to support the literacy need that's coming in.
Yeah, so I think if I condense what you're saying, it's that Olin has created a super group. And I'm thinking about the complications of just having multiple personalities in a room. And I mean like multiple people, let alone all these groups and networks. That's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. That is wild.
It
And that
is
is a
wild.
success. That's a,
It is wild, it's challenging, it's not a straight line, there's a lot of zigging and zagging. Again, there's competing priorities, there are different personalities, we have disparate budgets, right? Like, some of our organizations in a tweet or well, whatever it's called now, an X or a LinkedIn post can reach 10,000 people. Other ones have 100 people on a listserv, right? So we're also different in our size and our capacity. But what really brings us together is that shared mission. And it's just been a phenomenal opportunity for me, just personally, too, to be able to work with these organizations and kind of come together around some shared work, shared mission, and even collaborative grant writing, which it's not easy, but it's very rewarding when you have 21 people say, yes, that's the right deliverable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I cannot say enough. That is absolutely incredible. And I really appreciate you just sharing these thoughts and this huge, huge success.
We've made some success, but I will say, it sounds amazing, and it is. Like, it is not easy to get all of these different stakeholders on board, but the next piece is gonna be where we I don't know what euphemism you wanna use, but, like, put the pedal to the metal is, like, can we take all of this and make a better impact in the field, right? Like, how can this translate to more support for educators and learners?
Absolutely. And you spoke to on that much larger scale about this getting people together with also organizations that are competing for the same pool of funds.
Mm.
I saw that at a smaller scale in New Mexico. Only within the last couple of years, we're really trying to get our programs to work more collaboratively, and we're seeing that. It's a
Mm,
slow moving, but I can imagine that that's probably happening in multiple states too, of like this scarcity mindset. And in scarcity mindset, you can't grow, you can only sustain what you already have, and that's
exactly.
such a challenge, and that just staying at that same level, it's not great for programs, for practitioners, it's not great for students. We need to grow, and having a shared vision of our future is a big part of that. So, thank you. We did touch on this in different ways. I wonder if you have any more to say on what's the importance of pooling our shared knowledge?
Ooh, I feel like I would love to have another discussion about this with more people, right? Because I think I have a perspective on it, but hearing from many others about what value being part of this has given to them, I think is important. I don't know if I'm articulating that well, but I think the question that drives me and that drives my work, I guess, as director of this as network is what can we do together that no single organization can do alone? If one organization can pick this up and it's a project they carry out, it's probably not what All In should be doing. We're trying to tackle something that is not possible for any individual organization to do, but that we can all do as a group. And so I think that is the challenge, but that's also the opportunity that we have as a collective that we have way more resources together. Just institutional knowledge alone of the adult education field. I mean, some of our coordinating council members have been in the field for over 35 years and really understand the ebbs and flows of adult education, the various campaigns that have, happened at different stages in the early 90s. And, there's been a lot of moments of movement when it comes to adult education. But then there's also, times have changed, right? We're in a different workforce. We're in a different, more transnational country, like the internet. Hello. Like there's just a lot of changes that have happened that we need to reimagine what our adult education system looks like. And I think that K through 12 is in a similar situation where you can't only rely on chalk and talk and, a classroom with a teacher in the front as the main form of instruction. Like, we need to get creative and think about how are we integrating skills every place.
Oh, absolutely. Really well put. Thank you. So, just switch gears a little bit. What changes federally may impact adult literacy funding or fundraising, and how can programs on the ground prepare for those changes?
Ooh. Okay, you're putting me in the hot seat now. What changes can we anticipate? I do not know. I do not have a crystal ball. I probably have a magic 8 ball somewhere in my basement. But what we know for sure is that there is funding through September 2025. We do not know the level of funding that will happen in adult education at a federal level moving forward. We continue to operate feeling confident that there will be funding for adult education because there is bipartisan support for skills learning, workforce development, and my hope, but also my inclination is that there will be continued funding for adult education. However, we don't know what that mechanism is, if it will be the same as the current formula or if it will be different. What I would say, and this keeps me up at night as well, is like, how can we anticipate all of these changes? How can we respond? What I think I'm learning alongside everyone who's in this boat together, I absolutely do not know any more than anyone else who's listening to this call. But what I know is that adult education does make a difference, like the ripple effects of increasing literacy skills, getting that diploma, getting a high school equivalency or certification or a job. Those can be hard to quantify sometimes in the work that we do because they take long, right, to show the impact. And really, that is part of our challenge. But we need to get better at showing the impact, showing that access to education and training changes lives, strengthens our society. We need to show that adult learners who do participate report that they've created new opportunities for gaining literacy and workforce skills, building personal and professional connections. And it also directly impacts children. And I think that's a piece that we need to make clear to our elected officials, to our city council members, to our mayors, to our governors, to our state senators and congress people, not only federal, but at every level, that this changes lives and it changes economies. We need to invest in adult education for our workforce, for our economy, to reduce crime, to improve better health conditions. I mean, we need to stay focused in communicating the value of adult education. And actually, one of the projects that we're putting together for All In, regardless of what happens in the White House, because, you can't just keep watching all these different things happening and try to react to everything coming out. You got to stay focused and know that if we work together to advocate and communicate the value of adult education to anybody who will listen, corporate funder, government funder, state director, city council, right? Like continuously communicate the value of this work and show results when you can, we can keep our services in place because we absolutely need them, not just to keep the ones we have, but to expand our current system.
Really well put. Absolutely is excellent. I cannot improve on that.
I mean, honestly, I have no idea, right? I have no idea what is going to happen, just like you, just like anyone. But I do know what adult education can do. And so that is what I will continue to message is adult education changes lives. It works. It reduces recidivism. It decreases, health risks. Like it really does connect to so many of these other challenges that we're facing as a nation, right? And they're all concerned up in the White House about increasing efficiency. Well, we found in a 2020 Gallup study that increasing literacy skills to sixth grade level on a nationwide scale would increase our annual GDP by $2.2 trillion. You want to save money? You want to increase GDP? Invest in adult education. We have the numbers to prove it. So that's kind of the message we're trying to get across.
Absolutely. And I really just appreciate your matter of fact. We can't sort of be paralyzed by this fear or the unknown. And we don't know what's going to happen, but what
That's
we
right.
can do is do what we do the best that we can.
Yeah, we know what we're doing, so we keep doing it.
Yes, exactly. And I've, had different conversations with different practitioners about, and sometimes these fears can be paralyzing, I think. But I think what you're saying, and also a lot of what is just going on in adult ed, and having more of these conversations and making these connections, collaboration makes things more possible, gives hope, and also helps keep our focus and gets the goals that we want to achieve done.
Yes, yes. And talking to each other, Nadia, I just so appreciate being on this call because this is the kind of stuff that gives you light, that gives you energy. Like connecting in community is just so important in this moment. And, you just can't get down and worry about, well, what if this, what if that? Yes, all of that is possible, but we need to take care of each other, continue doing what we're doing. So I just really appreciate, even just having this conversation is improving my day.
Thank you. I feel I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but even without just the podcast, in general, I tend to feel better when I talk to my adult ed community. So the
Yes.
other practitioners, it makes me feel like, okay, I am not alone in this, even though I know that intellectually,
Yeah,
emotionally, it doesn't always come out, but the emotion comes out when we realize we have shared value, we have shared goal, vision, and we just appreciate each other, and just trying to remember that, especially in hard times, because we don't know what the future holds.
that's right.
Yeah, you touch on this so much in so many ways, but just in case, if anything else you have to add, what are the messages that we can convey about adult literacy that center on the importance of what adult education programs do? And like I said, you said so much about this, but if you have anything else to add.
I think with learning in general, right? Sometimes it's hard to see the progress because it can be slow. And so you have to understand that real sustainable change, like learning, it's not always perceptible at first. Like you can't always see the change that's happening, but it is happening. And so this movement to expand adult education, adult literacy, to make deeper connections between, foundational skills are workforce skills. What we are doing is impactful for our broader country, for our national security, for our military. All of these pieces, we are part of that. And I think that adult education, and I felt this working in programs, like we're like a sister program or an other program because we're not in the central education system. But I think that we are part of something bigger. And so we have to continuously understand that even if you can't see the impact on the daily, there is a very big ripple effect of day to day interactions with adult learners. When you get that call, like, I passed my math, I have my GED. I mean, you do not forget those moments, they stay with you. And all of us that work in the field or that have that direct service experience, that's what I try to go back to every time, right? Like, this is not really about any one individual. This is about what we're trying to do. Thinking 7 generations in, like, think about the long-term effects of strengthening our national literacy. I mean, I don't know why this is so hard for people to understand as an important thing?
Yeah, I guess I don't know of any studies about this specifically, but something that I just think there's just this idea that if you don't have an education in some way, that means that it's your fault, or
Yeah.
like, or lazy or something like that. Some sort of really, ancient pilgrim nonsense that we kind of just stick to.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I really appreciate what you were saying about it's hard to measure progress. And I think
Mhm.
it's because when you have a goal of like passing a test or getting into college, like that's such a big goal. We don't look at it as like chunking that up into smaller actionable goals.
Yeah.
And that's where you can see progress. So, one last question for you is just what do you want people to know about you?
I guess one thing in this role that has been just really interesting is like my personal and professional life intersect more in this role than in any other position that I've had. Even direct service, like I work directly in high school equivalency programs, but now in this role, in some ways I have a little bit more influence, on the field, not that much, we're still a very small network of organizations, but with that, I feel a great, responsibility. And I think I haven't quite figured out how to navigate my personal life, my professional life, and like thinking about how all of that comes together. So many people in the adult ed field, have a personal connection to the work. And I grew up with a single mom. She struggles with reading, still does, and digital skills, still does. Something as simple as accessing a health record or seeing what the doctor summary said or what's the follow up to that. I mean, I'm still like many of us in this sandwich generation with like parents and kids needing support. I'm still helping her navigate daily life, when it comes to accessing online records, making decisions, social security questions, right? Like, I think that people don't understand the interconnectedness that literacy is like part of your life forever. It's not just like people reach certain skills and then that's it. It's like it's a continued learning experience for me with my own mother, but also my father was incarcerated for most of my childhood, which is a whole nother podcast topic. But we were on, welfare, food stamps. We moved several times. And he got his education while incarcerated. He got most of his high school, a lot of college while he was there. And as I was grappling with all of this in life, I thought, okay, I'm going to leave Boston. I'm going to create my own way. Education is my ticket out. I'm never going to look back. And, where do you end up? I end up supporting learners who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, supporting learners with differences, supporting people who are just trying to get the skills they need to go about their day. And I think that I never thought this would be the pathway that I would choose, but it's definitely the path where I'm supposed to be. And I do think that connection between understanding the lived experiences of people that struggle with literacy or that did not complete their education for XYZ reasons, people's lives can change, and get for my dad, like getting most of his undergrad degree while in prison, it changed his life. He has like one credit left to finish. And I keep telling him, Dad, you just got to finish. He says, well, I don't know if it's even, I asked him if I could share this, by the way, but he said, well, it's not, what can I do with it now? I'm 70 years old. But it did change his ability to see a place in the world beyond the kind of environment that he grew up in. And I think that that's what education did for him. So even if he didn't get the undergrad diploma, he got the learning and he did not go back after that. And my parents are remarried. It's not a fairy tale story by any means, but it's how education can help you develop, the skills you need to interact with your family, to interact with the workplace, to interact with your community. This is just foundational stuff. And so for me to be in this role, it's really wild. I'm talking and thinking about these topics all day as if there's some kind of theoretical, but then I get off work and I'm having conversations day to day with family members, and it's still part of my daily life. But for my kids, and I have two, they're already starting to read like the literacy skills that they're developing, that they have access to, the education levels of their parents. It's generational change, right? I'm in my house that I own. that is an amazing thing. And so I think that being able to make that case for generational change, I am in this weird position where I'm making those cases, but I'm also living it myself. And so it's just wild.
That's absolutely incredible, and I'm thinking about some of our similarities, Sarah, because my mom raised me and my sisters by herself, basically, and I didn't realize until I was an adult is that she has enough literacy to be functional,
Yeah.
but she has told me that she does enjoy reading, but sometimes it takes her months to read a book and she actually forgets. And I've wondered if there is a learning disability that no one ever picked up on.
Yeah.
She also doesn't have digital skills, and I'm seeing more and more. And my family lives in New York. I'm from New York.
Mhm.
So I'm seeing that from a distance of like, how much can I support her from a distance if she cannot use these skills herself? As things are very digital now and they're only
Yes.
going to increase, that's not going to change. So it does affect ourselves, our lives. There's
Yes. It's
learning.
Yes, I think that that's what is so hard. Like you're on a podium or on a webinar or, in a panel and you're talking about these things as if they are evidence-based, research-based, and we do have all of that, but these are also people's lives. Like when it comes down to it, these are people's personal experiences, their families, and the generational change is real. I mean, COABE has done a tremendous job of building up their Students as Leaders program, where they have student ambassadors talk about the just tremendous change that took place in their life because of access to education. I mean, I have that story, you have that story. If you can't see it, you can't be it type of thing, right? Like you need exposure, you need education, you need learning and mentoring to achieve social mobility. And I think adult education is one of those fundamental entry points for people who didn't get that mentoring round one, right, in the K through 12.
Absolutely. And I think that that's a perfect point to end on of our conversation today. And just thank you so much for your time. This was such a great conversation, learning a lot and so many points. I feel like my brain is just gonna be buzzing after this.
Me too. I mean, you got me talking, you got me thinking. There's just a lot to think about. I mean, this stuff is very simple, but it's also very in depth.
Absolutely. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
Connect with Adult Ed, the NMEA podcast, is a project of the Propel Professional Learning System and is funded by the New Mexico Higher Education Department's Adult Education Division. Thank you for listening.